On the morning of Valentine's Day, the city felt softer than usual. A pale winter sun rose slowly over the rooftops, touching the windows with a shy golden light. The streets were not yet crowded. The usual rush had not fully awakened. Everything seemed to move at half its normal speed, as though the world itself wanted to breathe gently for a little while. Elara stood by her bedroom window, her hands wrapped around a warm ceramic mug. Steam rose in quiet spirals, disappearing into the air like tiny secrets. She liked mornings like this, calm, unhurried, forgiving. She had always thought Valentine's Day was loud. Too many red balloons. Too many glittering shop displays. Too much pressure to feel something extraordinary. But this year felt different. Not because she expected something dramatic, but because her heart was peaceful. Her phone buzzed softly on the bedside table. She turned, smiling before even looking at the screen. She knew it would be him. Liam never sent messages too early, afraid of waking her. He always waited until the morning light had fully arrived. He said sunlight made conversations warmer. She walked across the room, her wool socks whispering against the wooden floor, and picked up the phone. "Good morning," his message read. "Don't make any plans after 5 p.m. That was all, no heart emojis. No elaborate hints. Just one simple instruction. Elara's eyebrows lifted slightly, amusement sparkling in her eyes. She typed back, "Should I be nervous?" 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Reappeared. "Only a little," he replied. She laughed softly. Liam had always been like that, quietly playful, never overly dramatic. He preferred subtle gestures. Thoughtful details. Things that unfolded slowly rather than exploded with surprise. They had met 2 years ago in a small bookstore cafe. It had been raining that day too, though today the sky was clear. Elara had been sitting by the window with a novel she never finished, distracted by the rhythm of the rain on the glass. Liam had ordered tea. Chamomile. He'd apologized for accidentally taking the chair opposite her table when the cafe had filled up unexpectedly. She had said, "It's fine." He had said, "Thank you." And somehow, that simple exchange had stretched into hours of conversation. Now, standing in her bedroom with the quiet winter sun warming the floorboards, Elara felt that same calm curiosity she'd felt the first day she met him, a surprise. She tried not to imagine anything grand. Liam wasn't the type to book helicopters or orchestrate public declarations. He preferred quiet corners and meaningful moments. Still, she couldn't help but wonder. She spent the afternoon moving gently through her day. She watered her small collection of plants by the kitchen window. She answered emails slowly, with care. She played soft instrumental music in the background, nothing with lyrics, nothing that demanded attention. Occasionally, her thoughts drifted toward 5 p.m. What could he be planning? At 3 o'clock, she opened her wardrobe. She didn't want to dress extravagantly. That wasn't them. Instead, she chose a simple cream sweater, soft and warm, and a long gray skirt that moved easily when she walked. She brushed her hair until it fell naturally over her shoulders. When she looked in the mirror, she didn't see someone preparing for a dramatic romantic spectacle. She saw someone ready for a quiet memory. At exactly 4:52 p.m., her phone buzzed again. "I'm outside." Her heart skipped, just slightly. She slipped into her coat and scarf, taking one last look around her apartment. The late afternoon light had shifted into amber tones. Shadows stretched lazily along the walls. When she stepped outside, the air was crisp but not biting. The kind of winter evening that made you breathe a little deeper. Liam stood by the sidewalk, hands in the pockets of his dark coat. A small paper bag rested beside him. He looked up when she approached. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply smiled. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi," he answered. There was something in his eyes she couldn't immediately read. Not nervousness. Not exactly excitement either. It was quieter than that, anticipation. He picked up the paper bag and held it out to her. "For later," he said. "Not yet." She tilted her head slightly. "You're being mysterious." "I've been practicing." She laughed, the sound light and warm in the cold air. "Are we walking?" she asked. He nodded, and so they began. Side by side, they walked down the street as twilight slowly settled over the city. The sky turned from pale blue to soft lavender. Streetlights flickered awake one by one, casting golden halos on the pavement. Elara noticed how Liam's steps were unhurried, deliberate. As if he were guiding her somewhere important, not far, but meaningful. She didn't ask where they were going. Some surprises were sweeter when allowed to unfold at their own pace. The world around them felt hushed. Even the distant sounds of traffic seemed softened, like they were wrapped in cotton. As they turned onto a quieter street lined with old trees, Elara felt something shift inside her. Not excitement, not nervousness, trust. Whatever he had planned, she knew it would be thoughtful. Intentional. Something that reflected the quiet rhythm of their relationship. They stopped in front of a building she recognized, but hadn't visited in a long time. Her eyes widened slightly. The bookstore cafe, its windows glowed warmly against the deepening evening. Inside, soft lights shimmered against wooden shelves and rows of books. Liam looked at her, a small smile forming. "Ready?" he asked. Elara felt her heart settle into something gentle and steady. "Yes," she whispered, and as he opened the door for her, the soft chime above it ringing like a delicate bell, she had the feeling that this Valentine's Day would not be loud. It would be something else entirely, something quiet, something unexpected, and perhaps, something unforgettable. The bell above the cafe door chimed softly as they stepped inside. Warm air wrapped around them immediately, carrying the scent of roasted coffee beans and old paper. It was the kind of smell that made time slow down. The kind that felt like a memory even before anything happened. Elara paused just inside the entrance. Nothing had changed. The same tall wooden shelf stretched toward the ceiling. The same ladder leaned quietly against the far wall. Small lamps cast pools of amber light onto worn tables. Outside, the sky had turned deep blue, and the windows reflected the cozy glow within. But something was different. The cafe was empty. No low murmur of conversations. No clinking cups. No quiet turning of pages, just stillness. Elara looked at Liam, her eyes questioning. He gave a small, almost shy smile. "I asked if we could have it for a couple of hours." Her heart softened. "You rented the whole place?" He shrugged lightly. "Only the evening. I thought it might be nice." It wasn't extravagant. It wasn't dramatic. It was thoughtful, and that made it feel larger than anything else. She stepped further inside, her boots making gentle sounds against the wooden floor. On one of the tables near the window, the exact table where they had first met, 2 cups of tea waited, chamomile, she smiled immediately. "You remember," she said quietly. "I remember everything," Liam replied. They removed their coats and sat down across from each other, just as they had 2 years ago. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The quiet between them was not awkward. It was full, like a soft blanket laid gently over both of them. Elara traced her fingers along the edge of the table. "That day," she began softly, "I almost didn't come here." Liam tilted his head. "Why?" "I was tired. It had been a long week. I thought about going straight home." She met his eyes. "But something told me to stop." Liam let out a slow breath, a quiet laugh hiding in it. "I almost left." She blinked. "You did?" The cafe was crowded. "I don't usually sit with strangers." Elara smiled. And yet," he echoed. They sipped their tea slowly. Outside, a few snowflakes had begun to fall, light and delicate, barely visible against the night sky. They drifted past the window lazily, as if they had nowhere urgent to be. Elara leaned back slightly, studying him. "You're very calm," she observed. "I've been planning this for weeks," he admitted. "If I let myself get nervous now, it would feel like I wasted all that effort." She raised an eyebrow. "Planning what exactly?" Liam stood. He walked toward one of the shelves near the counter and picked up a small book. It wasn't new. The cover was simple, bound in soft blue fabric. He returned to the table and placed it in front of her. Elara looked down at it, confused. "There's no title," she said. "Open it." Her fingers moved carefully, almost reverently. Inside, the first page held a single handwritten sentence. "The day we met." Her breath caught. She turned the page. The next pages were filled with neat handwriting, Liam's handwriting. Dates. Small descriptions. Moments. She read slowly. February 14th, for 17 p.m., she was watching the rain instead of reading her book. A small smile trembled on her lips. February 14th, 5:02 p.m., she laughed softly. "It sounds like it belongs in this room." Her eyes began to glisten. "You wrote this?" she whispered. "Not all at once," he said gently. "I started that night." She turned more pages, little entries from different days over the past 2 years. The first time she fell asleep during a movie and pretended she hadn't. The day we walked by the river and she said winter feels honest. The way she always thanks the barista, even when she's distracted. Each entry was simple. Quiet. Observant. It wasn't a grand love story filled with fireworks and dramatic declarations. It was a collection of moments, small ones, real ones. Tears slid slowly down her cheeks. But she didn't wipe them away immediately. "I didn't know you noticed all this," she said. Liam's voice was steady, but softer than before. "I notice everything about you." The cafe felt even quieter now, as though the shelves themselves were listening. Elara closed the book carefully and pressed her hand over it. "This is the most beautiful gift I've ever received," she murmured. He exhaled slowly, tension finally leaving his shoulders. "I wanted to give you something that wouldn't fade," he said. "Flowers wilt. Chocolates disappear. But this is ours." The snow outside thickened slightly, though still gentle. Elara stood from her chair. Instead of speaking, she walked around the table and wrapped her arms around him. He held her carefully, one hand resting against her back, the other brushing lightly through her hair. There was no applause. No music swelling in the background, just the quiet rhythm of two steady heartbeats. After a long moment, she pulled back slightly, looking up at him. "Is this the surprise?" she asked softly. He smiled in a way that suggested otherwise. "Only the first part." Her eyes widened again. "There's more." He nodded. "Much more." Outside, the snow continued its slow descent, covering the city in a thin silver layer. Inside, beneath the warm amber lights and the silent shelves filled with stories, a new chapter was quietly unfolding, and Alara could feel it. This Valentine's Day was not about spectacle, it was about something deeper, something carefully built over time, and whatever came next, she knew she was ready for it. Alara remained close to Liam for a few quiet seconds after the embrace, her cheek resting lightly against his coat. The steady warmth of him felt grounding, real, and safe. When she stepped back, she studied his face again. "You said there's more," she reminded him gently. "There is," he said. "But we have to leave the cafe." She glanced around the room once more, the shelves, the glowing lamps, the window dusted with snowflakes. "Will we come back?" she asked. "Always," he replied. That answer satisfied her. They put their coats back on. Alara carefully held the blue book against her chest as though it were fragile glass. When they stepped outside, the air had grown colder, but not harsh. Snow fell in slow, drifting patterns, softening the city's edges. The street felt quieter than before. The world seemed wrapped in a thin, white hush. Liam extended his hand. "Come with me," he said. She took it without hesitation. They didn't walk toward the main road. Instead, he guided her down a smaller side street she rarely used. The buildings there were older, with brick facades and narrow windows glowing faintly from within. After a short walk, they reached a small park. Alara slowed. The park wasn't large, just a simple square with a few benches, bare trees, and a winding stone path. She had passed by it many times but had never paid it much attention. Tonight, however, it looked different. Along the stone path, small lanterns had been placed at careful intervals. Not bright electric lights, real lanterns with gentle golden flames flickering inside glass. They cast soft halos onto the snow, illuminating the walkway like a trail of stars resting on the ground. Alara's breath caught. "You did this?" she whispered. Liam nodded. "I asked the park manager if I could set them up for the evening." The lantern light reflected in her eyes as she looked at him. "This is beautiful." He squeezed her hand lightly. "Walk with me." They stepped onto the path, the snow crunched softly beneath their boots. But even that sound felt muted. The lanterns created a tunnel of warmth in the cold night, guiding them forward slowly. Alara felt as though they had stepped out of ordinary time. Each lantern seemed to mark something invisible, like milestones only they could see. Halfway down the path, she noticed small cards attached discreetly to some of the lantern bases. She stopped. "What are those?" "Read one," he encouraged. She bent down carefully and lifted the nearest card. In Liam's familiar handwriting, it read, "The first time you trusted me with your fears." Her throat tightened. She moved to the next lantern. "The night we talked until sunrise and forgot to sleep." Another, "The moment I realized I didn't want a future that didn't include you." Her eyes shimmered in the golden light. Each lantern held a memory. Not dates this time, but feelings. Turning points. Quiet realizations. She moved slowly, reading them one by one. Her pace became almost meditative. Each step forward felt like revisiting a gentle piece of their shared history. When she reached the final lantern at the end of the path, she paused. This card was slightly larger. Her fingers trembled just slightly as she lifted it. Tonight, that was all it said. She looked up at Liam. He stood just a few steps away, his breath visible in the cold air. There was a softness in his expression, but also something deeper. A quiet determination. Elara, he began, her heart began to beat more quickly, though the world around her remained calm. I've spent 2 years noticing the small things, he said. The way you hum when you're focused. The way you sit by windows. The way you care about people even when you're tired. He took one step closer. I don't want dramatic fireworks. I don't want grand gestures that fade by morning. The snow continued to fall gently around them. I want mornings, he said. Ordinary Tuesdays. Shared silence. Long walks. Bookshelves we build together. Her breath became unsteady. I want a life that looks like this path, he continued quietly. Lit by small moments. Guided by steady light. Not loud. Just certain. He reached into his coat pocket. For a brief second, time felt suspended. He didn't kneel immediately. He simply held her gaze. I didn't plan a performance, he said softly. I planned a promise. Then, slowly, he knelt in the snow. The lanterns flickered gently around them, casting warm reflections on the white ground. From his pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box. Elara felt tears gathering before she could stop them. When he opened it, the ring inside wasn't large or extravagant. It was delicate. A thin gold band with a small stone that caught the lantern light and shimmered softly. I love you, he said, his voice steady despite the cold. Will you walk every path with me, from quiet evenings to uncertain storms? The world felt incredibly still. No one else was in the park, no audience, no applause, just lantern light, falling snow, and 2 steady breaths in the winter air. Elara didn't answer immediately, not because she hesitated, but because she wanted to fully feel the moment, the calm, the warmth, the certainty. She stepped closer. Liam, she whispered, her voice trembling in the most beautiful way. She gently placed the blue book against her heart again. As if anchoring herself in every page he had written, then she smiled through her tears. Yes. The word was soft, but unwavering. Yes, I will. He exhaled in a breath that sounded like relief and wonder all at once. Carefully, he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. He stood, brushing a little snow from his knee, and she wrapped her arms around him once more, this time with something new between them, not just love, a shared future. The lanterns continued to glow, steady and patient, as if they had always known how this path would end, or perhaps how it would truly begin. For a long moment after she said yes, neither of them moved. The lanterns flickered softly around them, their golden light dancing across the snow like quiet applause. The world did not erupt into celebration. There were no sudden sounds, no dramatic music swelling from nowhere, just stillness, and 2 people standing close enough to feel each other's breath in the winter air. Elara pulled back slightly, her hands resting against Liam's chest. She looked down at the ring again, watching how the small stone caught the lantern light. "It's perfect," she whispered. "I was afraid it might be too simple," he admitted. She shook her head gently. "It's exactly right." The word exactly lingered between them like a promise. Snow gathered lightly on their shoulders, soft and powdery. Liam brushed a few flakes from her hair, smiling in that quiet way he always did when he felt something deeply but didn't need to say it out loud. "Are you cold?" he asked. "A little," she said honestly. He reached for her hand again. "Then let's keep walking." They didn't leave the park immediately. Instead, they walked slowly back along the lantern path, this time side by side in a new way. Nothing had visibly changed, and yet everything had. Elara noticed how her hand felt different in his. Not heavier. Not tighter, just certain. At the entrance of the park, she paused and turned around for one last look. The lanterns glowed steadily, small points of warmth in the winter night. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For making this feel like us." He smiled. "That was the only way I knew how to do it." They left the park and returned to the quiet streets. The snow had begun to settle, creating a thin white blanket over rooftops and sidewalks. The city lights reflected off the ground, giving everything a soft silver glow. Elara felt lighter than she ever had. Not because of excitement alone, but because of peace. There was no overwhelming rush in her chest. No anxious flutter. Just calm happiness. "Where are we going now?" she asked. Liam hesitated playfully. "You still have that paper bag," she reminded him. He lifted it slightly. "Ah. Yes." They walked a few more blocks before stopping in front of her apartment building. She raised an eyebrow. "We're back already?" "For now," he said. They stepped inside, climbing the stairs slowly. Elara felt as though every sound, the creak of the steps, the faint hum of the hallway lights, had become sharper, more meaningful. When they entered her apartment, the warmth wrapped around them instantly. The space looked just as she had left it earlier, soft lighting, tidy shelves. A quiet stillness waiting patiently. Liam placed the paper bag on the kitchen counter. Elara removed her coat and scarf, her movements unhurried. She watched him with growing curiosity. "Well?" she prompted gently. He reached into the bag and pulled out a small wooden box, not velvet this time. Not delicate, it looked handmade. Her eyes widened. "You made this?" He nodded. "Took me longer than I expected." She stepped closer, brushing her fingers across the smooth lid. "Open it," he said. Inside were two small keys. Elara blinked. "Keys? To somewhere new," he replied softly. Her heart skipped again. "I've been looking for months." He continued. "Somewhere with big windows. Wooden floors. Enough room for bookshelves." Her breath grew quiet. "A place we can choose together," he added. "But I wanted to secure it first. In case tonight went well." She laughed through sudden tears. "In case?" "I like to plan," he said gently. She picked up one of the keys, feeling its cool metal against her palm. "You found a place?" He nodded. "Is it far?" "Not too far." "Still near the cafe?" "Near the park." Her thoughts began to drift. not toward furniture or logistics, but toward mornings filled with sunlight through new windows. Toward shared coffee cups on unfamiliar counters. Toward the quiet comfort of building something side by side. "You didn't have to do all this," she whispered. "I wanted to," he replied. She stepped forward and rested her forehead against his. "Liam," she murmured. "You are my unique surprise." He smiled at that. They stood together in the soft glow of her apartment lights, holding keys that represented more than just a new address. They represented intention, commitment, a shared tomorrow. Outside, the snow continued to fall gently. Inside, Elara felt something settle within her, like the final piece of a puzzle quietly clicking into place. Tonight had not been loud, it had been layered. Carefully built, like the pages of the book he had written. Like the lanterns along the path, and she had the feeling that this was still not the final surprise, because love, when built patiently, never arrives all at once. It unfolds, slowly, softly, and always, right on time. For a while, they simply stood there in the quiet warmth of her apartment, the wooden box open on the counter between them, 2 keys, not flashy. Not ornate. Just simple silver keys resting against dark wood. Elara picked one up again, turning it slowly between her fingers. It felt surprisingly heavy, not in weight, but in meaning. "When can we see it?" she asked softly. Liam glanced at the clock on the wall. "Now, if you'd like." Her eyes widened slightly. "Now." He smiled. "It's Valentine's Day. I thought maybe we could end the night there." A gentle thrill moved through her chest, not a loud excitement, but something steady and warm. "Yes," she said. "Let's go now." Underscore 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 underscore. The snow had nearly stopped when they stepped back outside. The sky was clear again, deep navy with faint stars beginning to show. The city felt quieter than ever, as though it, too, was ready for rest. They walked hand in hand, their pace slow and thoughtful. Elara leaned slightly into him, feeling the rhythm of his steps beside hers. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "A little," he admitted. "I've only seen it during the day." She smiled. "Then we'll see it together for the first time like this." There was something comforting about that. After a short walk, closer than she expected, they stopped in front of a modest brick building with tall windows and a small iron balcony on the second floor. Elara tilted her head upward. "This one?" He nodded. Her heart beat just a little faster. They entered the building, climbing a narrow staircase lit by soft wall lamps. The hallway upstairs smelled faintly of fresh paint and wood polish. Liam stopped in front of a door at the end of the corridor. He took a breath. Then he handed her the key. "You open it." Her fingers trembled slightly as she slid the key into the lock. The soft click echoed gently in the quiet hallway. She pushed the door open. Darkness greeted them at first, but not emptiness. Liam reached inside and flipped the light switch. Warm overhead lights flickered on. Elara stepped inside slowly. Wooden floors, cream-colored walls, large windows stretching nearly from waist to ceiling. Even at night, she could see the faint outline of the park in the distance. She walked further in, her boots echoing softly. The apartment wasn't furnished yet. It was open, spacious, filled with possibility. She crossed to the windows and placed her palm against the cool glass. In her mind, she could already imagine sunlight pouring through in the mornings, a small table near the window, bookshelves lining one wall, a couch with soft blankets. "You can see the park," she whispered. "And the cafe is just around the corner." Liam said. She turned to him slowly. "You chose this because of us." He didn't deny it. "I chose it because I can picture us here," he said simply. She walked back toward him, her footsteps quieter now. In the stillness of the empty apartment, their presence felt amplified. The space no longer felt vacant. It felt like it was waiting. For what? She asked gently. "For laughter," he said. "For quiet evenings. For arguments about where to put the bookshelves." She laughed softly. "And for mornings?" she added. "Yes," he said. "Especially for mornings." She slipped her hand into his again. "I love that it's empty," she murmured. "Why?" "Because it means we get to build it together." He looked at her in that way he did when she said something that settled deep in him. They began to walk slowly from room to room, a small kitchen with wooden cabinets and a wide counter, a bedroom with another tall window, a narrow hallway that led to a compact study nook. Elara paused in the study nook. "This could be where we write," she said. He smiled. "You can write. I'll make tea." She leaned against him lightly. The apartment felt calm. Unrushed. Like it wasn't demanding to be filled immediately. After exploring every corner, they returned to the living room. Liam sat down on the wooden floor, leaning back against the wall. He patted the space beside him. Elara joined him. They sat side by side on the bare floor, shoulders touching. No furniture, no decorations, just potential. She held up her hand again, studying the ring in the soft overhead light. "Today feels unreal," she admitted. "Does it?" he asked. She nodded. "Not in a dramatic way. Just peaceful. Like everything aligned quietly." He exhaled slowly. "That's what I hoped for." They fell into a comfortable silence. Outside, the faint glow of streetlights reflected against the snow-covered ground. Inside, the empty space seemed to breathe around them. Elara rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you think we'll ever look back at tonight and laugh?" she asked sleepily. "Why would we laugh?" "Because we were sitting on the floor of an empty apartment without even a chair." He chuckled softly. "Maybe." She closed her eyes for a moment. "I hope we never forget how this feels," she whispered. "How does it feel?" She thought about it. "Steady," she said. "Like we didn't rush into something loud. We walked into it quietly." Liam turned his head slightly, resting it gently against hers. "That's how I want our whole life to feel." She smiled in the dim light. "Then we're already doing it right." They stayed there for a long time, long enough for the city outside to grow even quieter. Eventually, Liam stood and helped her up. "Ready to head back?" he asked. She glanced around one last time. "Not back," she said softly. He looked at her, puzzled. She squeezed his hand. "Forward." And together, They turned off the lights, stepped into the hallway, and closed the door behind them, carrying with them not just keys, but a beginning. When they stepped back into the hallway, Elara felt different, not changed in a dramatic way. There was no sudden rush of transformation, but steadier. As if an invisible thread had gently tied her present to her future, Liam locked the apartment door carefully. The soft click echoed in the quiet corridor. "Next time," he said, glancing at her, "we'll unlock it without wondering." She smiled. "Next time, it will already feel like home." They walked down the staircase slowly, their footsteps unhurried. Outside, the night had deepened. The snow on the sidewalks shimmered under the streetlights, undisturbed and glowing faintly like powdered silver, instead of heading immediately back to her apartment. Liam paused on the sidewalk. "There's one more thing," he said. Elara laughed softly. "You keep saying that." "This is the last one," he promised. She raised an eyebrow playfully. "Should I prepare myself?" "No," he said gently. "This one is simple." He led her toward a small rooftop terrace accessible from the side of the building. It wasn't tall, just 3 floors, but high enough to see the city stretch out in quiet patterns of light. When they reached the top, Elara's breath softened. The terrace had been prepared too, not elaborately. Not extravagantly, just thoughtfully. A small foldable table stood near the edge, covered with a simple linen cloth. 2 plates. 2 glasses. A single candle protected inside a glass cylinder so the wind wouldn't extinguish it. Beside the table sat a thermos and a small container. Elara turned slowly toward him. "You planned all of this in one night?" "Not one night," he said with a slight smile. "Many small ones." The city skyline shimmered quietly in the distance. Windows glowed warm against the dark. Somewhere far below, a car passed, its sound fading quickly. Liam poured something from the thermos into the glasses. "Hot chocolate," he said. It felt more us than champagne. She laughed softly. "Definitely more us." They sat across from each other, the candlelight reflecting in their eyes. The wind was gentle, just enough to remind them they were outside. Elara wrapped her hands around the warm glass and took a slow sip. The sweetness and warmth spread through her immediately. "This feels like a dream," she murmured. "It's not," Liam replied. "It's just intentional." She liked that word, intentional. No rushed gestures. No last-minute panic, just care. He opened the small container, revealing slices of simple homemade cake. "You baked?" she asked, amused. "With supervision from my sister," he admitted. She took a small bite, smiling at how imperfect and wonderful it tasted. They ate slowly, talking about nothing and everything. About where the couch might go in the new apartment, about whether they preferred curtains or blinds, about how many bookshelves were too many. At one point, Elara grew quiet. Liam noticed immediately. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. She looked out over the city lights. "I used to think love had to be overwhelming," she said. "Like something that swept you off your feet so suddenly you couldn't breathe." He listened without interrupting. "But tonight," she continued, her voice calm, "I can breathe. Fully." He reached across the table and took her hand. "That's how it should be," he said. The candle flame flickered gently between them. She studied his face in the soft light, the familiar lines, the quiet steadiness. "You surprised me," she said. He smiled. "That was the plan." "No," she corrected gently. "Not just tonight. The way you love me. It's different." "In what way?" "It's not loud," she said. "It's patient." He squeezed her hand slightly. "Because I'm not trying to win you," he said. "I'm choosing you." The word settled deeply inside her, choosing, not proving. Not performing, choosing. The wind shifted slightly, carrying a faint scent of snow and distant chimneys. They finished their drinks and remained seated, simply watching the city breathe below them. Eventually, Elara stood and walked toward the edge of the terrace. She looked out at the glowing windows and quiet streets. Liam joined her. "Make a wish," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "I already did." "What was it?" She turned toward him. "That we never forget how simple this feels." He nodded. "Then let's promise that," he said. They stood there together, hands intertwined, the cold air brushing lightly against their cheeks. Valentine's Day was almost over, but instead of feeling like something had ended, it felt as though something had gently begun. No fireworks, no dramatic music, just two young hearts aligned in the quietest, strongest way possible. After a while, they returned downstairs. This time, when they walked back toward her apartment, there was no anticipation left, only warmth. When they reached her door, she paused. "Stay," she said softly. He hesitated only for a second. "Okay." Inside, the apartment felt familiar yet slightly transformed, like it knew what had happened tonight. Elara placed the wooden box with the keys carefully on her table. Tomorrow, they would begin planning. Soon, they would move. But tonight, they simply sat together on her couch, wrapped in a blanket, the city silent outside. She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "Happy Valentine's Day," she whispered. He kissed the top of her head gently. "Happy beginning," he replied, and in the soft hush of the night, with no audience but the quiet city beyond the window, they let themselves rest in the gentle afterglow of a surprise that had not been loud, but unforgettable. Elara woke before the sun. For a few quiet seconds, she didn't move. She simply listened, the soft hum of the heater, the distant hush of early morning traffic, the steady, familiar rhythm of Liam's breathing beside her. Then she remembered. The lanterns, the ring, the keys. A slow smile spread across her face. Carefully, so she wouldn't wake him, she lifted her hand from beneath the blanket. Pale dawn light slipped through the curtains, brushing softly over her fingers. The ring caught the faintest trace of light and shimmered gently, not bright, not dazzling, just present. She turned slightly toward Liam. He was still asleep. One arm loosely draped across the blanket, his expression peaceful in a way that made her chest ache with affection. She studied him the way he had studied her in all those quiet moments he'd written about, the curve of his eyelashes, the faint crease between his brows even in rest, the warmth of him, steady and real. Last night had been full of movement, walking, discovering, choosing. This morning felt different, still, grounded. She slipped out of bed quietly and padded into the kitchen. The floor was cool beneath her feet. She wrapped a cardigan around her shoulders and began preparing coffee. The simple ritual felt comforting. Water heating, beans grinding, steam rising. Outside, the sky slowly shifted from deep blue to pale gray. Snow still covered the rooftops, smooth and untouched. She poured 2 cups. When she returned to the bedroom, Liam was awake, blinking softly as if surfacing from a gentle dream. "Good morning," she whispered. He smiled immediately when he saw her. "Good morning, fiancé." The word made her laugh quietly. "That's new," she said. He pushed himself up slightly, taking the cup she offered. "How does it feel?" he asked. She considered the question as she sat beside him. "Peaceful," she answered honestly. "You?" He took a sip of coffee. "Thinking." "Certain." She liked that answer. They didn't rush to talk about plans or timelines. There was no sudden pressure to define every next step. Instead, they sat together in the soft morning light, sipping coffee in comfortable silence. At one point, Liam reached for her hand again, examining the ring more closely in daylight. "It looks even better now," he murmured. She tilted her head. "You were worried?" "A little." She smiled gently. "You don't have to worry so much." "I know," he said. "But I care." She leaned her head against his shoulder. After finishing their coffee, they moved to the living room and sat by the window. The city was waking slowly. A few early walkers left careful footprints in the snow. Elara rested her chin in her hand. "What do we do today?" she asked softly. "Nothing dramatic," Liam said. "Maybe we start with breakfast. Then, maybe we visit the apartment again. In daylight." Her eyes brightened. "Yes," she said. "I want to see how the light falls through the windows." He smiled. "I knew you would." They got dressed slowly, moving around each other in easy familiarity. There was no rush. No urgent need to announce their engagement to the world just yet. That this morning felt private, sacred in its simplicity. Before leaving, Elara paused by the small wooden box holding the keys. She picked it up and slipped one key into her coat pocket. "Ready?" Liam asked. She nodded. Outside, the air was crisp but brighter than the night before. Sunlight reflected off the snow, making everything glow. As they walked toward their future apartment, Elara felt something new settle in her. Not excitement, not nervousness, belonging. When they reached the building and climbed the stairs again, the hallway looked different in daylight, less mysterious, more welcoming. This time, Liam didn't hand her the key. She already had it. She unlocked the door with steady hands. When it opened, sunlight poured in through the tall windows, flooding the wooden floors with golden warmth. Elara stepped inside and stopped. "It's even more beautiful," she breathed. Dust motes floated gently in the air, illuminated like tiny stars. She walked to the window again and opened it slightly. Fresh winter air drifted in, cool and clean. She turned back to Liam. "I can see us here," she said. He stepped closer. "So can I." They stood in the middle of the empty living room, sunlight surrounding them, no furniture, no decorations, just space waiting patiently. Elara took a slow breath. "Let's build something steady," she said quietly. He nodded. "Let's build something that feels like this morning." She smiled, soft, clear, certain, and as sunlight filled the room, warming the floor where they stood side by side, the unique surprise of Valentine's Day no longer felt like a single event. It felt like the first gentle page of a much longer story, one they would write together, day by quiet day. They didn't rush to fill the apartment with plans. Instead, they wandered through it slowly, as if learning the rhythm of its silence. Elara walked barefoot across the wooden floor, testing how it felt under her steps. The boards were smooth but not glossy, warm in tone, imperfect in a way that made the space feel lived in even before it was. Liam stood near the kitchen doorway, watching her with a soft expression. "What?" she asked, noticing his gaze. "You already look like you belong here," he said. She smiled faintly. "Maybe I do." Sunlight poured through the tall windows, shifting gently as morning moved forward. The park outside was bright and peaceful. A few people walked along the snowy paths, their movement small in the distance. Elara stepped into the study nook again. "This is where mornings will begin," she said quietly. "With coffee?" Liam asked. "With coffee," she confirmed. "And notebooks." He leaned against the wall. "You'll write here. And you'll read drafts you pretend to criticize but secretly love." He laughed softly. "That's accurate." They walked into the bedroom next. The light there was softer, filtered slightly by a neighboring building. Elara imagined curtains, light linen ones that moved gently when the window was open. "I don't want too much furniture," she said thoughtfully. "Just what we need." "Agreed," Liam replied. "Space to breathe." She turned toward him. "That's what last night felt like." "Breathing?" he asked. She nodded. "Like love that lets you breathe." He stepped closer. "I never wanted to overwhelm you," he said quietly. "I wanted to grow with you." She reached for his hands. "You did." For a moment, they stood in the quiet bedroom, sunlight brushing softly across their shoulders. Then Elara did something unexpected. She sat down on the floor again, right in the center of the empty room. Liam blinked, amused. "What are you doing?" "Imagining," she said. He joined her without hesitation. They sat cross-legged, facing each other. "Okay," he said. "What are we imagining?" "Our first night here." He tilted his head. "Like last night?" "Similar," she said. "But different. This time, it won't feel new. It will feel ours." He thought about that. "I imagine boxes everywhere," he said. She laughed. "That's realistic." "I imagine being too tired to unpack everything." "And ordering takeout," she added. "Definitely ordering takeout." They both fell quiet for a second. "And then?" he asked. She softened. "And then we sit on the floor again," she said. "Because maybe we won't have assembled the couch yet." He smiled. "And we'll look around," she continued, and realized that nothing dramatic happened. "We just kept choosing each other until suddenly we were here." He reached out and brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. "That's my favorite kind of love," he said. "What?" "The kind that doesn't rush. The kind that builds." Her eyes glistened slightly in the sunlight. They stayed there for a long time, imagining quiet futures, cooking simple dinners, reading in companionable silence, opening windows on warm spring mornings, arguing gently about where to hang art, laughing in the kitchen when something burned. Nothing extraordinary. Everything meaningful, eventually, Elara stood and walked back to the living room. "We should tell our families soon," she said softly. "Are you ready for that?" Liam asked. She considered. "Yes," she answered. "But not yet. I want to hold this quietly for a little while longer." He understood. Some joy is sweeter when it's shared slowly. He walked to the window and looked out at the park. "Do you think," he began thoughtfully, "that there will be days when this feels hard?" She walked over and stood beside him. "Yes," she said honestly. "There will be days when we're tired. Or frustrated. Or unsure." He nodded. "But," she added gently, "we'll remember this." "This?" "This feeling," she said. "Of choosing. Of calm certainty." He slipped his arm around her waist. "Then that's what we protect." She leaned into him. They stayed like that until the sun rose higher and the golden light shifted into something brighter. Eventually, they locked the apartment again and stepped back onto the quiet street. This time, when Elara looked at the building, it didn't feel mysterious or new, it felt familiar, promising. As they walked back toward her current apartment, she squeezed his hand lightly. "You know," she said, "when you told me not to make plans after 5 yesterday, I thought maybe we were just having dinner somewhere." He laughed softly. "That would have been easier. But this was better," she said. He glanced at her. "Yes," he agreed. It was. The snow had begun to melt slightly under the late morning sun. Drops of water slid from rooftops in slow rhythms. Everything felt like it was gently shifting, winter leaning towards something softer, just like them. And though Valentine's Day had technically passed, the surprise was still unfolding, not in grand gestures anymore, but in the quiet realization that their future had already begun to take shape, not loudly, but beautifully. By the afternoon, the city had fully awakened. Snow softened into slush along the sidewalks. Sunlight reflected off windows with a clearer brightness than the night before. The world had returned to its usual rhythm, but for Elara and Liam, something subtle had shifted. Back at her apartment, they sat at the kitchen table with cups of tea, chamomile again, as if honoring the place where it all began. Elara traced her finger along the rim of her cup. "Are you ready?" she asked quietly. "To tell them?" Liam replied. She nodded. He leaned back in his chair thoughtfully. "I don't want it to feel like an announcement," he said. "I want it to feel like an invitation." She smiled softly. "An invitation to what?" "To watch us build something." She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Then let's start with our parents." They decided to call, not text. This felt like a moment that deserved voices, not notifications. Elara called her mother first. Her heart fluttered, not from doubt, but from anticipation. When her mother answered, cheerful and curious, Elara's voice trembled slightly at first. But as she spoke, explaining the lanterns, the book, the apartment, the trembling disappeared. It became calm, certain. There was silence on the other end for a moment, then a soft gasp. "Oh. Elara," her mother whispered. "He planned all that?" "Yes," she said, smiling at Liam across the table. "He did." Her mother's voice warmed with emotion. "He loves you gently," she said. Elara felt her chest tighten in the best way. "Yes," she replied. "He does." When she ended the call, her eyes shimmered. but she was smiling fully. "She's happy," she said. "I never doubted that," Liam replied. Then it was his turn. He stepped onto the small balcony for privacy while calling his family. Elara watched through the glass door, observing the subtle expressions that crossed his face: surprise, laughter, a hand brushing through his hair as he explained. At one point, he looked up and caught her watching him. He smiled, soft and sincere. When he returned inside, he exhaled slowly. "They're excited," he said. "My sister asked if she can help decorate." Elara laughed. "That sounds right." They sat together again, letting the news settle into the world. It felt strange and wonderful all at once. Their engagement was no longer just theirs, but somehow, it still felt private. "Do you want to post something?" Liam asked gently. Elara hesitated. "Not yet," she said. "I don't want it to turn into something loud." He nodded. "We don't have to." They spent the rest of the afternoon quietly. They made a simple lunch. They talked about timelines, not in pressure, but in curiosity. "Next month, maybe we start moving small things," Liam suggested. "Yes," Elara agreed. Slowly. They both liked that word, slowly. As evening approached, the sky softened into pastel tones, peach and lavender blending gently over the city. Elara stood by her window again, just as she had the morning before Valentine's Day. But now, her reflection looked slightly different, not because of the ring, though it caught the light beautifully, but because of the calm in her eyes. Liam joined her. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "That yesterday morning," she said. "Before I knew anything." He smiled faintly. "I was just standing here, holding a cup of tea," she continued. "And I felt peaceful. I didn't know something life-changing was about to happen." He slipped his arm around her waist. "Maybe that's the best kind of change," he said. "The kind that doesn't shatter your world. It simply expands it." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Yes," she whispered. "It expanded." Outside, the last of the snow melted from the rooftops. Drops fell in slow, rhythmic patterns, like quiet applause from the sky. "Are you afraid of anything?" Liam asked suddenly. She considered the question honestly. "I'm afraid of losing the calm," she admitted. He tightened his hold slightly. "Then we protect it," he said. "How?" "By remembering that we don't need to impress anyone," he replied. "We only need to keep choosing each other." She turned toward him. "That's enough." "It's everything," he said softly. They stood there in the fading light, wrapped not in dramatic promises, but in something steadier, commitment, the kind that doesn't roar, the kind that endures. And as night returned gently to the city, Elara realized something important. The unique surprise of Valentine's Day was never just the proposal, it was the way it had unfolded. Quietly, thoughtfully, in a way that mirrored exactly how they loved. One more chapter remained, not of the day, but of the feeling it had begun. That night, the city felt different again, not because of snow or lanterns or candlelight, but because something inside them had settled into place. Elara and Liam sat on the floor of her living room, backs resting against the couch, a soft blanket draped over their legs. The lights were dim. A single lamp cast a warm circle of gold around them. They hadn't turned on music. They hadn't turned on the television. They didn't need to fill the silence. Elara leaned her head gently against his shoulder. "Do you think," she asked softly, "that we'll ever forget this week?" Liam shook his head. "No," he said. "Not because it was dramatic. But because it was honest." She liked that word, honest. The book he had written, the lantern path, the empty apartment, the rooftop with hot chocolate, none of it had tried to be more than it was, and that was exactly why it mattered. Elara lifted her hand again, watching the ring shimmer faintly in the low light. "I used to think a unique surprise had to shock you," she said quietly. Liam turned slightly toward her. "And now? Now I think a unique surprise is something that feels completely right. Even if you didn't expect it." He smiled at that. "I didn't want to sweep you away," he admitted. "I wanted to walk with you." She closed her eyes briefly. Feeling the truth of those words, outside, a light rain had begun to fall, gentle drops tapping softly against the window. The last traces of snow were dissolving quietly into the night, winter letting go. She thought about the first day they met, how simple it had been. A shared table. A quiet conversation. Two strangers who didn't know yet that they would become home for each other, and now here they were, not at the end of a story, but at the beginning of a life built intentionally. "Liam," she whispered. "Yes. If we ever forget how to be calm, remind me of this." He brushed his fingers softly through her hair. "I will," he said. "And you remind me not to overthink everything." She laughed gently. "That might be harder." "I trust you," he replied. They fell into silence again, but this time, it felt deeper. Not the quiet of anticipation, the quiet of arrival. Eventually, Liam shifted slightly. "Can I see the book?" he asked. Elara reached for it from the coffee table and handed it to him. He opened to the very last page. It had been blank, until now. He picked up a pen from the table beside him. Elara watched as he wrote slowly, carefully. When he finished, he handed it back to her. She read the final entry. February 15th. She said yes. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just surely. And in that quiet certainty, I found the rest of my life. Tears filled her eyes again, but they were calm tears. She closed the book and held it gently against her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" he asked softly. "For loving me in a way that lets me breathe." He pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "Thank you for walking beside me." The rain continued its soft rhythm outside. Time moved forward, as it always does, but something stayed. Not the lanterns, not the rooftop, not even the exact feeling of that Valentine's Day evening. What stayed was the foundation, the steady choice. The quiet promise. Later, when they finally stood and prepared for sleep, Elara paused by the window one last time. The city lights shimmered through the rain. She no longer felt like someone waiting for something extraordinary to happen. She felt like someone who had found something enduring. She turned back toward Liam. "Ready?" he asked gently. She smiled. "Yes." And as they lay down, the world outside continuing its gentle rhythm, Elara understood something deeply comforting. The most unique surprise was never the proposal, it was discovering that love could be soft, that commitment could feel like peace, that the future didn't have to arrive in fireworks. It could arrive in lantern light, warm tea, handwritten pages, and two steady heartbeats choosing each other again and again, and in that quiet, breathing stillness, their new chapter began.